All right, welcome again. Once again, thank you for being here. Maskagro, which is how are you, or how have you risen, how are you laying in my Nubian language. My name is Dima Mahmoud, and I am privileged to be here representing two amazing collectives and organizations, Edfu Foundation and A Growing Culture. We are here to discuss a topic, an issue that continues to be pushed to the side. We are here to ask, until when will women be pushed out of the decision-making rooms, out of the decision-making spaces? We have with us some, again, I cannot thank them enough for being here to share some of their wisdom. We're going to trace the history of the colonial legacies of trade. We're going to connect some dots, because what happened yesterday is affecting today, and what's happening today will affect tomorrow. And we need to see how this cycle, this vicious cycle, can be stopped. This collaboration was based, in fact, on an article that was produced by one of A Growing Culture's partners, Grain. And I will yield to my sister, Bridget Mugambe, to tell you all a little bit about this article. Before we start, I will ask everyone who is not speaking to please mute your microphones as we do that, and as well, sorry, everything is popping on this side, which means this is going to be a popping conversation. I take a moment to thank our interpreters in the interpretation booth who are allowing us to break the communication barrier, the language barrier, so that we can send this message far and wide in as many languages as possible, until we can have these languages in our indigenous languages as well. Bridget, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dima, and I'm really excited to be part of this gathering and part of this group of strong women, and I think a few of our brothers that have come together to, I think, have this long awaited for discussion. I know women, we all know women are central to so many things. And I'm not saying this because most of us here are women, but I think it's a fact. And I think it's inevitable that we get to a point where we discuss the role of women in trade, in our economy, and in different aspects of developing Africa and, of course, other parts of the world. My name is Bridget Mugambe, and I work with the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa, one of the organizers of this event. AFSA is a continental network of networks in Africa, bringing together more than 30 African networks covering 50 African countries. Our core is food sovereignty, and of course, therein lies issues of trade. And yes, Dima, you've asked me to speak to the article that was developed by Grain, which is quite excellent. And I will not go through detail by detail, but just to give an overview that brings us to this discussion. We all know that trade is an integral aspect of our lives, like I've mentioned, and in one way or another, we engage in trade. And as Africa is now moving strongly, to harmonize its trade frameworks, especially through the free continental trade area, and also opening up more to free trade agreements, especially with Western governments. There are a number of questions that are coming up. There are a number of key questions that we need to ask, and we need to bring to the table and discuss and try to find solutions to. Some of the questions that I feel we should discuss in this session, but also as we move forward in other discussions to come, because I know this is a first of many others to come. What kind of trade do we want for Africa? Who is benefiting, from this trade? How are those that are most vulnerable, especially the women, undeniably, those in rural areas, how are they impacted? How do they fit on the decision table, where trade agreements are being done, are being signed, are being taken. And for me, this is very critical because we need to go beyond the agreements that we're having now, scrutinizing them, criticizing them, or appreciating them, but also understanding, what is the legacy, where does this come from, what is the history, and I'm really, really excited to listen to that discussion. And the paper that Brain has so well researched and put together on women and trade and free trade agreements brings out challenges around privatization of resources, including seeds, water, land, all in the name of trade and investment in Africa. So I am hoping, and I am sure those are some of the things that we are going to hear with our very excellent and powerful panel of women that is going to speak to us. Issues around exploitation of labor. It is not, it's an exposed fact that, women are the most exploited in terms of providing labor on plantations. We all know the story of plantations in Africa and how women have become victims of this kind of labor in terms of health, in terms of livelihoods, in terms of domestic violence. So we really, really need to get to the core of this and have this discussion. The issues around local markets. Who is benefiting from trade? How are the trade agreements, impacting on women? Who are the key players within local markets, especially in Africa? So I really hope and expect that we will have these discussions, we'll have this put on the table, and we'll be able to interrogate some of these questions. Of course, we also recognize the role of international corporations and governments from the global north, and that is why it's very critical that we connect with colleagues and friends from the diaspora, so that we can also interrogate this link, also come up with, hopefully, with suggestions on how do we work together, how do we further strengthen, the positive role of women in the trade that we want for Africa. And of course, also, as I conclude, I take the opportunity to recognize the brains behind this, AFSA, Growing Culture, bilaterals.org, EDFU Foundation, Brain, Siatini, Ja from Mozambique, and all our colleagues and the powerful women and men that are part of this conversation. Thank you so much, Dima, and thank you everyone for giving me a few minutes to speak to you.
Thank you so much, Bridget, for that introduction, for that brief. We have put the link for the article in the chat box. Please do share it. Please read it, please share it, please, please, please ask more questions. So throughout this conversation, we're really having it as a dialogue. I will take a moment to ask all our speakers to have their video on so that we are able to spotlight you into the conversation. Really, there's no room for formalities. So as much as I would like to sit and introduce each of you in all the glory that you well deserve and earn, and your respective organizations that you work with, we're not going to do that. This is about getting straight to the point. And we will be putting some information about the speakers and the organizations in the chat box. Please follow. But really, how this is designed is a family conversation. So in our tradition, I will ask my elders permission to speak and permission to welcome them into this space as I add them to this room. And I thank you all for being here. let's start with history. Let's start with our history and understand or give us a foundation. We'll go with the history and then we'll trace the evolution of policies of trade in Africa, and then go into how are women responding to this here. The title of this conversation, of this series, very deliberately did not have the word women in it, because we can no longer compartmentalize our advancement, our development. It's all collective and it's all connected. So this isn't just about women. Everything that is about women is about everything and everyone else. And everything that is about the advancement of Africa is by default about women. So I will ask the queens on the screen for a minute or two just to introduce yourself, if you are comfortable to introduce any particular affiliation. And one thing you want our audience, our members from around the world, to keep in mind as we have this conversation. Madame Jane, I start with you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dima. I'm Jane Narunga. I work for Siatini. Siatini is a mouthful, but we work on economic issues, trade, investment, agriculture, fiscal policies, to ensure that those policies work for the people. Maybe what I have to share, that what I believe in, that we can trade our way out of poverty if that trade is fair.
Thank you. Dee.
Greetings, everyone, and much in the same way that Dima says she will ask her elders, I am going to ask our ancestors to come into the space, because we are standing on their shoulders. We have their blood running through our veins, and we must thank them because they fought and died for our liberty. And in this space, I will describe myself as the dispossessed, the daughter of enslaved Africans and indigenous peoples, as well as Europeans. And I was born in the belly of the beast, London in England. And my parents are from the Caribbean, and I have grandparents from different Caribbean islands, as well as from Europe. And my work is around justice and about stewarding the earth. And that means I work in several different organizations, which we'll come to speak about. So I think one thing we need to remember is that we have knowledge that was lost, that has been co-opted, that has been erased, that has been stolen. And as part of decolonization, we need to be reclaiming that and standing strong in that.
Ashe, thank you. Mère Claire.
Hello, everybody. Hi, I'm Claire Kenoma. I'm based in Lomé in Togo, in West Africa. My organization is member of the African Alliance of Food Sovereignty. And I work on economic, social, and cultural rights, particularly on the right to food, land rights, and also women property rights. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to take a moment to also presence the great and fierce Mama Elizabeth, who was meant to be, well, I can't say meant because only what is meant to happen happens. She was going to be joining this conversation and sharing her wisdom and her immense efforts towards food and seed sovereignty in Africa. She unfortunately cannot join us, but we presence her and presence her work and look forward to continuing to learn from her and work alongside each other in this space. Let me preface by saying this is part of a series. So this is only part one, and the goal is to start the conversation, but it will continue. We'll have more details on that later on as we speak. Please, if you have questions, ask more questions. You have the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom if you would like to direct a specific question to any of our speakers, but also feel free to use the chat box as well. So as we said, we start with the history, and I will yield to Madame Jane to tell us a little bit about the history of trade on the continent. What do we know? What do most people not know? And how have we come here? How have we ended up here where we are today?
Wow, Dima, that's really complicated. You know, when I was preparing for this talk, you know, I said, now, where do I start? You know, we are talking about a continent, or, you know, a history going back to, you know, ages and ages, but I would try. And thank you so much, Dima, Suzanne, Bridget, the entire team, you know. And when I look at you people, I feel really happy, young people, you know, bringing us together to discuss these issues. By the way, I'm based in Uganda. I'm born and bred in Uganda, a true Ugandan, a true African. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just give a brief sketchy history of trade on the continent. I will look at the trade policies, you know, which marginalize women and why, and maybe just give a few proposals on how we can be able to move forward. As you all know, trade is about the exchange of goods and services between an entity and between people. You know, it might be for monetary reasons, but it can also be just barter exchanging. And we can see this going far back, even when our ancestors were hunters and gatherers. They used to exchange, you know. So trade is an integral part of communities, an integral part of the people. And, you know, there is a misconception that trade started with a transatlantic trade, the slave trade, that's where people start from. But trade has evolved over time on our continent, you know. Like I said, from when we are hunters and gatherers, the pre-colonial period to the colonial period, and even where we are now, the post-colonial period. So we have a rich history of trade on the continent, very, very rich, which I won't go into, with trade routes in Northern Africa, you know, Dima, your ancestors, you know, going to trade with Egypt, going even to China, the Arab Peninsula. That history is there. On the East African continent, you know, trading on the coast, the Swahili traders coming inwards. But even before then, we have a history of communities, you know, trading. In my own country, Uganda, you know, we have communities, the Banyoro, the Baganda making backcloths from trees, backcloths, very beautiful, trading with the Banyoro. The Banyoro used to be ironsmiths, making iron implements, spears and hoes. And there used to be this exchange with salt, tobacco, and all that. So we have a rich, rich history of trade on the continent. But what I want to point out clearly, that before colonialism, our trade, intra-Africa trade, was there, very vibrant, you know. So when you look at the CFTA saying we intra-regional trade and so on, it was there. And we used to trade in manufactured products, iron, clothes, you know. So we need to bear that in mind, you know. But the intensity of trade on the continent corresponded with the opening up of the continent to, you know, to outsiders, you know, to Arab traders who undertook slave trade, but also other trade like, you know, tusks and ivory and gold and all that. But what I want to say, you know, when you look at our trade, pre-colonial and also colonial and post-colonial trade, our trade with the rest of the world is characterized by the externalization of resources from Africa to outside. In fact, that's how we are integrated into the global economy as exporters of raw materials and importers of finished products. So when you look at right from slave trade, when we started trading ivory, slaves, then we went into coffee, cocoa, tea, cotton. We used to get mirrors, beads, you know. Now we are getting other manufactured products. And that's why almost all African countries are running a trade deficit, because we are sending raw materials, getting finished products. But with those raw materials, we are sending the jobs, our sweat, women's sweat, that in mind. So it hasn't changed. Africa's position in the global economy hasn't changed at all. So that's a painting the history of trade, you know, on the continent. I just want to talk about the rules of the game. Each game has rules, but who sets the rules of the game? Because they are rules, whether they are written explicitly or implicitly. Any game, like now we have a game, Dima is the one telling us, you do that, you do that, you do that one. Talk, those are the rules of the game to them, you know. So any game has rules of that game, but who sets that game? In the modern world, we want to go back to the colonial, because even then there were rules of that game, you know. How do we trade? You know, if I give you 10 buckloss, how are they set? Trade rules are either negotiated or they are imposed through conditionalities. No, they are imposed, maybe like Dima tells us, and you listen, I give you 10 minutes, so you say, okay.
It would seem we have lost the connection. The tech gremlins are here and present. We see you, we're not going anywhere. Proof of the power that is coming through this conversation, more and more so. Oh, there we are.
I'm back, you know, and those are challenges of being consumers of things which are made outside. And when we say
I'm sorry, Madam J, is anyone else having difficulties hearing?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe you are muted. Can you check if you have unmuted?
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I was looking at the trade rules and the ideology. The ideology behind the trade rules are the neoliberal ideology that we have to open up our economy. When you liberalize, you are better off. When you are privatized, the private sector is more efficient. And then you deregulate, let government get out of development. And this ideology has also been behind the trade rules and the trade agreements. And we have seen these agreements and conditionalities being pushed on Africa by the World Bank, the IMF, when they are providing loans to Africa. We have seen organization, so economic partnership agreements, it's also about, can you hear me?
We are having some difficulties with the audio, so perhaps we will give the Ugandan internet a little break, a respite, if you will, for it to adapt to this strength that is coming from your voice. And perhaps I will yield the conversation. Thank you so much, Madam Jane, for these insights and more to build on them as we move forward with this conversation. And it's not just a brief history, this is quite a mosaic, really. And Queen D, you and I, we speak a bit about the relentless efforts of erasing the ugly side of trade. And it is Black History Month in the UK. Tell us a little bit about the many, many legacies of trade affecting Africa today and her diaspora. How do you see it?
Okay. So I know Jane touched briefly on sort of the transatlantic trade of people who were enslaved, millions. It's estimated that 15 million people were transported to the Americas. How many more people died crossing? We don't know. But when we talk about trade, we have to talk about ourselves as African peoples, as African heritage peoples who were and still considered commodities. Traded, for our bodies, for our skills, for our knowledge, and that still happens today. Our global food system is basically the plantation system where we're extracted from both in Africa and in the diaspora. Our people are still enslaved. We have children in sort of cacao plantations who are enslaved. We have thousands of people who work in Europe who pick food in fields and live in atrocious conditions. We have Caribbean people and people from South and Central America, African heritage people who travel to North America and to Britain in terms of our food system. But beyond that, you know, we are subjected to the major legacy of trade, which is racism. And racism, you know, was cooked up to basically support, you know, this is always difficult to talk about, you know, because this is here. You know, that violence we're subjected to and have been subjected to is here. You know, it runs through my veins. It is in my DNA. So it is always something difficult to talk about. So these systems of oppression were created to justify why we should be enslaved and why we should remain in the situations that we are, which is poor, hungry, and underdeveloped in our nations. So it means the trade systems that have evolved will continue to keep us in those positions. And we have given so much to the world, right? So much has been extracted from us. I mean, my work is in food. So our modern food cultures, our modern food systems, you know, are based on our foods, our cooking methods, our knowledge about growing things. You know, Will eats rice, right? It was us who brought rice to the Americas and taught people how to grow rice, right? You know, so many crops and species of livestock that were brought from Africa to the Americas, and as a result went to Europe. And without them, you know, we wouldn't have the economies we have. So that dispossession, that disconnection from land and culture and loss of language, you know, women have borne the heavy weight of that. Stella Dadzi wrote a book recently called A Kick in the Belly to describe some of the experiences enslaved African women had in the Caribbean. And that's how it is, right? We are constantly being kicked in the belly as racialized and gendered women. Whereas in our cultures, you know, and you know, someone asked a question, how do we know about that? What are the sources, right? You know, I am grateful for the oral tradition, right? Because without the oral tradition, I would not be here, right? Those stories and that knowledge that somehow survived and passed on despite all that, right? So we have our systems, we have our knowledge, right? There is so much that we can reclaim and stand strong in and, you know, be saying to Europe, to America, that we don't need you. We don't need you in our countries. Right? We don't need aid is a false solution. They want us in that situation. Right? It is time for us to stand up and say enough is enough. I think I'll leave it there.
I don't know what more can be said. I mean, it's quite this is the drop the mic and walk away moment, as millennials will trend with. Thank you for that, and I'm very, very grateful to the point you made regarding data. Where's the proof? Where's the research? And I hope to pick that up in the open dialogue we will be having after Mercle's intervention and contribution here, sharing with us the evolution of trade policies, if at all? How have they evolved, if at all, to the better, to the worse? Who and what are they serving today? Mère-Claire, I yield to you.
Thank you. My talk will be based on the women traders in Africa, mainly West Africa. You know, in the past, the transactions were based on cash crops and raw materials. And in most of the communities, women have not the right to own land. But those transactions of raw materials and cash crops are based on land ownership. So women are not in this, were not in these transactions. But women transactions were based on basic needs products, food crops. So women are very active in these transactions. When we take West Africa, for example, you can find women having the trades between the countries and between West Africa and Central Africa. And we have the famous markets in West Africa, such as the markets of Lomé in Togo. We call it Adawalato. We have the Mokola markets in Accra in Ghana. We have the Dantokpa markets in Benin, in Cotonou. So women used to have their transactions on these markets, and they mostly travel by road, going from one country to the other, from one capital to the other, from one big market city to the other, and they sell their goods. And I say those goods are necessarily and mostly basic needs products and food products. And in the past as well, people were, I said, exported and imported by the colonizers to work in different countries. For example, you can find people from Togo, Benin, working in other countries like Congo, DRC, Congo, Brazzaville, Cameroon. And men went there, taken by the colonizers and even after independence to work there in working as teachers, nurses, doctors, telecommunication workers. And in Togo especially, and in Benin, they came back to get married based on social and the cultural consideration. They will not get married in the country they were working. So they come back and get married, take wife in their own country. And these wives, when they go to the countries where the men were working, these women started the trades of basic needs products and food products. And this brought them to develop the economic activities. When they come for holidays, they take the products of the country they are living in and come and sell in their native country. And when they go back, they take products from their own country to sell in the countries their husbands are working in. And they took the habit of dealing with these transactions, and they know the countries from Togo to Ghana to Nigeria to Niger and so on. And there are specific products they trade on. For example, even presently, the coastal countries, they go and take onion, for example, spices from Niger, northern Nigeria, and bring this to the coastal markets. Even you can see now women leaving Togo and go to Niger and Burkina Faso for onion, for tomatoes, and they come and sell. Apart from that, when I say basic needs products, you have the clothing products, you have the, let's say, services products that women can use and bring to their own countries. I said that they travel by road and going from one place to the other, from one country to the other. And I quoted also the famous market in the sub-region. And this transaction, they have some difficulties on the way as well. And this is the reason why in West Africa, we have the ECOWAS Declaration on People and Goods Free Movements in the community. But most of the time, people, the women have some difficulties. They suffer, they have the harassment on the roads, there is corruption, and there are also non-official taxes, and also there are too many control bodies on the way. And this influences so much the work, the economic activities of the women. But what I can say is that women are key players in the economy of the region, the sub-region and the region. When I take West Africa, Central Africa, and others, women are the key players. And when the activities are there, they need to have those transactions so that they can push the economy of the countries. I can also say that women economic activities in West Africa, for example, these activities constitute a tool to fight poverty and hunger in the countries. When those women are not there for the transaction, the economy of the countries cannot go properly, because there is women with their transactions, they feed the families, they feed the communities, and they have a key role to play in the economy of the countries, especially for foodstuffs and basic need products. But most of the time, when the decisions are being made, they are being taken, they are not consulted. But these women are really powerful women. I think you heard about women traders in Togo who are called Nana Benz, and they are really famous and in the economy of the country. I can stop for this, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing this this wisdom and the details also. It's very appreciated to hear the side, the West African side, and I'm sure this will allow us to connect more dots, because there will be similarities that we're seeing in the East, in the North, in the South, and in the diaspora as well. So thank you so much for these contributions. And again, I am very appreciative because the same connection is coming through here with what Dee was talking about, our tradition. One of the first things that comes up when African women start, say, especially young African women today, start demanding to be reckoned with, demanding to be heard, demanding a seat at the table, or this table will be flipped, basically. We are labeled as brainwashed by the white man, as importing Western ideologies that are meant to corrupt our culture, our heritage, and I don't know if you're looking for something to throw, Mère Claire, but when I read this, or when someone tells me these things, this is the first thing I want to pick something and I want to throw it, because not only have our brothers and some of our male elders, but also some of our aunties, our mothers who have internalized this idea that African women are not decision makers, that African women are not meant to be asking for, and your place is the kitchen, or go make food, go do something, raise the kids, but you can't ask for your resources, you can't ask for accessibility for land. This is a whole conversation that I believe AFSA also held 3 days ago. It's escaping me at the moment, but this stirred quite a conversation on Twitter, saying that women or feminists who speak of this are disrupting our heritage and are encouraging the breaking of African families. In a minute from each of you, I would love a response from my elders to something like that. Because I'm young, I can say I don't know my history enough, although I know enough to know that I am a descendant of warrior queens. I am a Kandaka, a fortified one, which is a Nubian warrior queen and a queen mother and a queen sister. But let's say I am young, you are my elders. What would you respond to those who tell us women have no place in trade because it is against our heritage? That is what's being weaponized against us today.
If I can just answer the question, I can say that women are very powerful in the economy of our countries. When I take West Africa, women traders are strong and powerful, but the patriarchy and the colonial and the organization of our states do not want to put the women in the front place. But those women are key players in the economy of the countries. And if the economy is strong, so politics can also bring the political life of the country can be ruled properly. But most of the time, they push the women behind because of cultural considerations. But when you take the economy of our countries, the women play key role in the economy. They are strong, they are powerful. They are the ones who have the main transactions, but they are not given the right to speak in the public place. That's the point. And you young women, you have to recognize what your mothers and grandmothers have done and build on this and claim for the space in the public place. That's it.
Thank you. Dee, would you care to add?
Yeah, I think, when we talk about tradition, a lot of times our traditions have been to what has evolved as well. So I know within the Yoruba tradition, which is part of my heritage, that women rule the marketplace. So we've always traded. And if you looked in the Caribbean and South America and even North America, it is women, right, who have traded, and women have kept economies going because men were in fields, men were at war. It is women who have kept things going. So we need to build on that. We need to build on that, and it is about smashing the patriarchy, and our feminism or womanism isn't a white feminism. Ours is grounded deeply in our cultures, grounded deeply in our spiritual beliefs, but also in justice, right? It is about relating to each other rather than trying to be equal with men. We are powerful in our own right. We don't want to be equal to men. We are powerful in our own right.
I see Madame Jane nodding and ready with some.
I I just wanted to say the reality on the ground, really, it shows that women are already there in trade, And when you listen to what my sister Claire has said about, women traders in West Africa, in Togo, the Nana Benzes, those of you who have been into the Mokola market, almost 90% there of the people there are women, very vibrant market. The cross-border trade for me in the East African region or the border, it's women, and they are so creative, from the roadside markets to carrying things on their heads, women, especially when you look at what has been happening during the COVID era, it's women who have kept the families going, trading this, trading that, So that's not debatable whether women are where they are in trade, their family there. But what we need to do is to look at the policy environment, because our policies are gender blind completely. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, So we need to address that.
I'm muted. Yes, thank you so much for this. This is, despite pointing to the many very valid points that were all raised, very true points that were all raised here, that women have done it, continue to do it, are still doing it, and want to do it better and more. This is still an issue of contention, in many ways, saying that tradition hinders women. And so we're seeing some of the questions and the comments in the chat. I take a moment to thank all our participants who are sharing these questions, and perhaps now is a good time to open this dialogue into a more solution-based conversation. How do we do better? How do we shift this paradigm, shift this balance of power that is so adamantly stacked against women? Privileged as the moderator, I'm going to start with a question of my own before we go into the audience. I am not someone who is familiar with trade. And when my sister Susan came through with the article and said, how can we have this conversation? I was intimidated. And there are a lot of other young Africans, I say young just to make my mother smile, who fear entering conversations if we don't have enough knowledge. Now, so I had to read up quite a bit to be able to have this conversation in some capacity that does not make me look completely lost. And one of the things that kept coming up is that women's labor, women's work is considered informal. Can we talk a little bit about that? Why is that done? What does it actually mean? And how does that reflect in terms of policy? And this is an open dialogue, so feel free to unmute and go with the answer.
Is that something that's coming from colonialism? Because, from the research I've undertaken, African women and our work has always been valued. Yet within sort of this modern globalized world, women are not valued. Our work is not valued. Bringing up children is not valued. Caring work is not valued. And, education, we're not deemed worthy enough to be educated. And all those are policy issues around gender equality. And, there've been generations of women before me who've fought for that equality and for our work. to be recognized, and there are women who will come after me to do that. What we're dealing with is power and how we relate to power. As Black women, we have that intersectionality that includes race as well. So, you know, it's like, we're not worthy, we're not seen as human to be valued, right? We're still being seen as commodities who can be used. And until we change that, nothing else will change.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mekler,
Yes.
I'm wondering if
Yes, if I can just answer your question, is I agree with Dee when she said that women are caretakers. Women take care of the whole family, the community. And most of the time, their caretakers' work is not valued as such, as useful, as core work in the community. This is the reason why when they have the trade, people consider this trade as being in the informal economy. It is essential for the life of the community, for the life of the family, for the life of the countries. So there is a need to value what women are doing in the communities and in the countries. Most of the time, the policies, the regulations are just designed and taken by so-called scholars and people who have a lot of degrees, and those one making the decision at the political level and also in the international levels. But it is not because women have not got school degrees and have gone to school for a long time that their activities are not important for the countries. We need to value what women are doing in the trade in our countries. And I say that women trade is essential for the life of the countries, for the families and the communities. They play a key role in the countries. So it is not a question of going to school, university, and have degrees and so on. They have to be recognized as such, as key players in the trade of the country. Because if they do not feed the people in the families, there won't be life, there won't be any country to work in. So their role is crucial and essential. And there is a need to value it and not to take it as informal economy. And those people sitting in the offices here and there, considering that women are not playing their role. They do, and they are essential in the economy, even in the political life of the countries. And they have to be considered. That's what I can say for the time being.
Thank you. I would like to pick from what both of you have said and direct this question to Madame Jane. There is the argument that the free trade agreements is meant to promote women's roles in trade. And there's actually also a question here from Susan, and I told Susan to join the open dialogue. This is what you get for missing out, Susan. Jane spoke about gender blind policies. Where does this analysis stand within the AFCTA and other FTAs or free trade agreements, which are hyped as development? Are these
okay? Thank you so much, Dima.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dima, and thanks, Susan, for that question. When you look at the trade agreements, all trade agreements are purportedly supposed to work for women, for the people, for development. which isn't really true because we have signed so many agreements, would be out of poverty. But what I wanted to say really is that it's important to, because for example, the CFTA is based on liberalization, reduce tariffs, open up. And the question is whether when you open up, women will be able to participate more, which is really not true. So the entire makeup of the continental free trade area is not right, not for the women, but also for the entire continent, even men and women. The small scale, medium SMEs won't be able to compete with bigger companies. But the challenge is how this is being addressed. For example, in the continental free trade area, they have come up with a youth and women protocol. In the organization, they came up with a joint declaration on women economic empowerment. But if the entire agreement is flawed, whether you put a women protocol, that agreement won't work for women. So for me, what I'm calling upon women, my sisters, my daughters, that let us engage on the entire agreement. Look at the CFTA. Does it work for women? Because if it isn't, a standalone women protocol won't work for women. And I have seen this in the free trade agreements. The agreement is wrong entirely. They are liberalizing areas where women are, then they tell us, don't worry, you have a gender protocol there, you have a gender chapter. We'll call that pink washing agreements and policies. And I think we need to say no to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. I'm absorbing a lot here. Okay. We have about 25 minutes left and we could be having this dialogue ongoing. I'd like to take some of the questions from the audience. The first one is directed at Mère Claire. Have there been any small-scale loans given by your government to women's businesses?
Yes, there is a government scheme to give loans to women traders. But we find that the government is not doing much. There are rather a lot of microfinance schemes around this government program. And those microfinance scheme, or let's say enterprises or companies, they are charging a very high interest rate. And this does not help the women as so much. There should be a better reflection on giving loans to women. Which kind of loan? Is it only microcredit? Why don't women have loans as such in the banks? And the banks consider the women trade? Because in our country now, women are at all levels. You have the petty trade and you have the international and intercontinental trade as well. And governments should think about this and organize this more appropriately so that women trade is something that is facilitated for the women, because most of the women, they are strong and powerful in the trade, but there are a lot of difficulties. They have to fight seriously in order to keep the pace. And this one, I think, as Jane said, this protocol in the free trade in the continent for women. Does it work for women? Did they consider the women, the realities of the women economic activities before they took this protocol? So we need to go through deeply in this thing and find where it works for the women or not.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to be going through the questions, but if any of our speakers have something to add to that, please do feel free. The next question is actually to both Mère Claire and Madame Jane. Both of your regions have regionally integrated commercial units of the ECOWAS and EAC, respectively. What measures have these region blocks done to both women in contemporary businesses? Madame Jane, let's start with you.
Okay, thank you so much for that question. For the ESC, I think in the East African region, regional integration has really.
If I may, sorry to interrupt. There's a little bit of
women
a
cross-border, you know, the cross-border trade.
Madam, could I ask you to speak?
They have, for example.
Sorry to interrupt you. Could I ask you to switch the camera off, because it seems to not, the audio seems not to be coming through very clearly. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, please go ahead. Thank you.
Maybe this is better. So what I was saying, East African region, regional integration has really helped women cross-border traders. A number of issues have been put on table. A number of challenges have been addressed. For example, even providing information to women, reducing taxes on cross-border trading, having a one border post on the border, so that when you want to go to Kenya, you don't need to clear your goods in Uganda and then also in Kenya. You know, so regional integration has really put information for women, and it has facilitated women cross-border traders. For me, I think it has really been good, and also women have been part and parcel of the rules of the game when it comes to putting in place rules which are good for cross-border For me, I think it had women. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mère Claire, do you have something you would like to add to the context?
Yes, I can say that women are present in the trade, even in the past, and now they are improving their position in the trade transactions. But there is a need to, let's say, help and support them so that they can improve their activities. I've just said that women are at all levels, from the petty trade, selling at the side of the street in the market, local markets, up to international transactions. There are many women traders going to, let's say, involved in trade with Europe, America, and China now. But what are the facilities that those, let's say, the governments and let's say financial institutions are given to them? There needs also to have insurance to support their transactions. And these are, I say, the new generation have to help the older generation in order to sustain women trades in Africa.
Yes, we will be having more of that part of the dialogue in part 2 of this series as we look more into engaging the diaspora. Thank you for this. And actually the next question is the perfect tie-in and is a question to Dee. What is the role of women in the diaspora in advancing women emancipation and women empowerment?
Okay, I think one, we have to use our Western privilege to get into those spaces, to be in positions of authority so that we can be influencing and shaping the policy. So my interest in sort of trade sort of only emerged in the last couple of years because of the impacts of imports from Africa to the UK, and in terms of Brexit and the sort of trading agreements that were being made. So it is for us to be advocating for decent or not even decent, just policies so that our people are not impacted negatively. So, but there are very few of us in that space, and we need more people in those spaces, from the global level at the UN to various country level spaces. We need more of us, and you don't need a degree. I don't have any degrees. I'm just an ordinary person with a lot to say. So we need more people, and we need to be mentoring our younger people to be able to function in these spaces.
Thank you so much to all of you, again, for the emphasis on the youth taking a more serious, more hands-on role in co-creating the Africa we deserve. And I say the Africa we deserve and not go with the slogan of the African Union of the Africa we want, because I personally don't know who we is when the African Union speaks. They're not representing me, that's for sure. They don't represent young people like myself asking these questions. So your encouragement and your openness to have this dialogue, to take this time from your day, from all the important work that you are doing, to share with us tips on how to strengthen our knowledge and how to better come together, and how we can learn from our past to impact our future, our present and our future, is highly appreciated. And I'm very, very grateful. I suppose we can yield the last few minutes to a question that is more general, and we can include the brothers in in addressing that. How do these agreements not just impact women? Because again, we say if it's impacting women, it's impacting everyone. But how do they more deliberately impact smallholder farmers, informal traders? How are they affecting the work of the indigenous peasants, whether it's, and I'll speak just from my background and my work with food sovereignty through a growing culture. How is it impacting indigenous seed sharing, indigenous seed caping? How is that being affected? And I yield to Madame Jane. Perhaps you would like to add something to this. I know this is some of the work that Siatini does as well, Siatini Uganda.
Okay, thank you so much, Dima. Maybe I can also take the question of Erika, who was asking how we can be able to make the CFTA work maybe for small scale producers and for women traders. When it comes to the CFTA, I think it's really, really important that the CFTA looks at production, because when you look at the CFTA, it's talking about liberalize trade. But we need to have something to trade in. We are not going to recycle things which are coming from China. You know, we need to produce, we need to add value, we need to trade among ourselves. So production is very, very critical. And maybe I will also share a statement as Africa Trade Network, which we developed for the Africa Union, consider this issue of production and of ensuring environment sustainability of smallholder farmers and also the small petty traders. So, and also another issue which we need to look at is the capacity of our medium and MSMEs to trade. You know, take an example of standards. Issue of you can't trade without standards. You know, but our MSMEs don't know anything about standards. Then lastly is the issue of the way the negotiations have been done. For example, we have liberalized 90% of our trade. That's what we are supposed to liberalize. 7% for maybe a period of 5 years. And then we are protecting 3%. But it's very, very important for us to know what are those products which we want to protect. You know, we go back to Dima, what you are saying. These are the products which are supporting our food security, our rural development. And that's where women have to come in to say, you know what, if you are taking the 90%, the 3% is about this, you know, about our food security, our food sovereignty. But you find that the way that the negotiations were done, the women are not there. In fact, there are very few people who have been on that table to negotiate the CFTA. And that's the pity, really, you know. So we need to be on that table. And as they say, either you're on that table or you're on the menu. And we are going to end up on that menu being eaten up, which is really a pity. So we need to see where the negotiations are and see whether we can be able to make our voices heard in this process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I take a moment to see if Mekler or Dee have something to add. We still have some more questions, but if there's anything to add to that.
Yes, I agree. We need to have that seat at the table, but we also need to be creating the alternative and setting our own tables, because I personally do not want to be part of a system that will never consider us or value us. So we need to be creating the alternatives whilst being at the table, sitting with the lions, as it were, and dismantling and disrupting their power.
Thank you. Speaking more to that. Oh, I see Mekler moving. No. One of the questions we have here is how best can we maximize contribution of matriarchy or maternalistic ideologies while minimizing the disempowering narratives of patriarchy and paternalistic stereotyping attitudes and cultural experiences? Now that's a loaded question if I've seen one ever. Mekler, would you like to take a stab at this question?
It's true that we have patriarchy and laws in our countries, but also we have also the place of the women and the mothers in our communities and in our countries. And I've just said that women are very strong in Africa because they are the caretakers and they take care of everybody. And the question is to recognize the key role they are playing. And for this, we need to value the position of them in our countries, in our communities, in our families, instead of looking at the Western standards and the Western picture of the women in our countries. I agree with Dee that we need to create our alternative. We need to create our table and speak forward and say that what is what we are doing. Here are our activities. This is our role in the countries. And we need to learn from indigenous knowledge. We need to learn from our communities' practices and value what is strong for the women. And this, we need to sit and reflect on it and let's say document and show to the countries for the decision leaders that we are here, we are there, we need to be considered. When they go there in the conference and taking the decisions, they need to listen to us. They need to build from the ground before they go there and negotiate or plan for policies. So we need to create our alternative, have our narrative, and also build up our table and push it forward. If not, they are just considering, when they say women in this free trade, they're considering those who have gone to the university, have big diplomas, and are trading with the banks and so on. But we need to consider the smallholder, the petty trader in our country. So that's what I think we need to do from now on.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for voicing that and confirming it and affirming it, because reclaiming our power, reclaiming our narratives, reclaiming our truth. We hear these so many times. We're hearing now grants coming out for people to reclaim their narrative and reclaim the truth, but hardly any funding is available to revitalize our indigenous language. If we're not revitalizing our languages, how are we going to reclaim our narratives if our narratives are passed through oral histories? If our traditions are passed in, and then research to, not even research, but to allow us to sit and document, to sit and reflect, as you said, Mère Claire, this is a whole other conversation. And how these words then get used by us and against us at the same time, and by us against us. So when it's free trade or fair trade, what's fair? Fair to whom? Free from what? And how is it free? And when we start asking these questions, we come up with even bigger questions, that this language as a whole, these colonial languages that are used to construct these agreements, that our misleaders on the continent, I insist on calling them misleaders because they are only leading us into disarray. Our real leaders are on the street, are in the farms, are doing the work that you all are doing. As far as I'm concerned, you are our leaders. But those on the table, on the conference tables, when these organizing comes forward and says, let's have the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent that has been approved and will be held for the first time next year. No, some of the discussions are, do we want room for non-governmental organizations? Do we want room for civil society organizations? If this is a question you have to ask yourself, then really what these governments have to ask themselves is, where is the fear? What are you afraid of if these people are on the same table with you? Where is the fear here? And this is a conversation that I am hoping we can pick up on the 29th of October. Please do join us to continue the conversation, because there are a lot of schemes and these languages are being used to draw in the diaspora to draw in the younger Africans, the young continental Africans who have gone abroad to study and have gotten accustomed to a certain standard of living, and returning to the continent can be somewhat of a burden to some of them. So to attract them back with their knowledge, with their expertise, certain considerations are made, certain compromises are made, that you will not be coming back to the Africa you left. You will be coming back into a space where you will be comfortable and free and whatever it is that you've experienced once you've left this continent. And in this process, we are replicating harm, and in this process, we are gentrifying our Africa. And so these are conversations that I look forward to continuing to have. Please think of these questions to our audience joining us in this Zoom. If you are still here with us from the beginning, thank you for staying. We have shared the link. Please take a moment to register, share it with people, and join that conversation as we look at what does investment really look like? Why are these misleaders, are these African governments so desperately calling for investment from outside the continent, whether they are African diasporans or otherwise? Why are we not turning to our neighbors first? And if we are turning to our neighbors and they will say this is what the free trade area is about, where are the people who are creating these policies? So we have a lot more questions to ask, and this is just the beginning. And I'm so very grateful that we got to spark this conversation here with these wonderful, powerful, fierce matriarchs blessing the start of this conversation. And hopefully we can continue having it and continue organizing and building and growing together for the Africa we deserve. And with that, I say nothing more than thank you, peace and blessings to be upon you. I leave the last minute if you have anything to add. Or any last
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. This is a good conversation. We start, we'll continue, and I hope we'll have more to say and to organize ourselves. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll leave you with the 4 R's: repatriation, restitution, reclamation, and reparations. That's what we need to be talking about.
More on that on the 29th of October. Mark your calendars, register and join us. I thank our partners, co-organizers, bringing the space together, and a massive thank you to our interpreters who are allowing us to carry this conversation in languages to reach our diaspora in whatever and every capacity we can. Please do share this video. And once again, thank you so much. And I tell you goodbye in my Nubian language, Afia Logo.
Bye.
Here you go.